I am half Japanese, or what Japanese people like to call hafu. If you're also half Japanese wondering what it's like to live in Japan, today I'll be sharing with you my journey and my experiences having grown up here in Japan, being half. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Emmy. I was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan, and on this channel I try to bring the authentic side of Japan from a unique native perspective. So today's topic is thanks to one of my viewers. Thank you, Michael. He wanted to know what it's like to navigate being mixed in Japan, especially for those considering moving to Japan. Today I'm going to be sharing my experiences on navigating mixed identity in Japan, tie a little bit of my personal experiences living here. I hope this video reaches anyone who is considering moving to Japan, especially being mixed, because I know there's a lot of discourse going on around that right now. Do I consider myself Japanese? As for my identity, I identify as Japanese. Whenever I introduce myself, I say that I am Japanese, and that is primarily because I was born and raised here. As for identity, I do identify myself as Japanese. However, a sense of belonging, I feel like because I lived in Canada for 4 years, I feel like I have a greater sense of belonging over there just because it's so multicultural and there are plenty of people who have similar personalities with me, and I never felt like I had to assimilate to any type of culture. Canada was a perfect place for a person like me. So as for sense of belonging, I definitely felt very belonged in Canada. So in Japan, we actually have a specific word to call half mixed people like me. It's literally called hafu. But the perception of mixed individuals has definitely evolved over the years in Japan. I do believe that historically in the past, being mixed was seen as unusual. I feel like hafu in general historically were never fully accepted into Japanese society. And that's one thing that has definitely evolved over the years. In recent years, there's been so many foreigners that have moved to Japan. There's a lot of half individuals that you see everywhere. And because of that, I feel like people's attitudes have shifted. And on top of that, mixed individuals are definitely more visible in media. We see more half people in media, fashion, music. You see more people in the entertainment industry for sure. And I feel like that also helps with people's perception of mixed people. Historically, Japan was a country where they did not open the country for any foreigners to come into the country. Very nationalistic. I think slowly but surely there's a growing acceptance for foreigners and mixed individuals into our country. So I feel like that has been a great progress into our society. However, there are still challenges that exist. Japan as a culture, it's the complete opposite of a individualistic culture, whereas you see that more so in Western countries. There's this idea of needing to fit in, right? And I feel like a lot of people have struggled doing that because the reality is half individuals are never gonna be fully Japanese in a Japanese person's POV, in my opinion. I feel like sure we can be accepted for the most part and we can get along with Japanese people, but I don't think we'll ever be considered Japanese, fully Japanese to a Japanese person's eyes. In terms of my mixed identity and how it was perceived by others, I think I definitely knew or noticed that I was different than everyone else from a very early stage. I did go to kindergarten at a Japanese school called Yochien. So that was the only time I went to a Japanese school, and I definitely did notice that, my mom was the only non-Japanese lady, and I did feel like everyone kind of sort of kept a distance. Maybe subconsciously, I don't know, but I definitely felt that growing up. In terms of language and communication, I feel like that is the most significant issue that I still struggle with to this day. I feel like with language, my experience is very unique. I don't think being mixed affected my language abilities. I do believe that my environment did. Because I went to an international school from kindergarten moving upward to high school, I did remember my Japanese was really good when I was in kindergarten during my Japanese years, or that one single year. But after I started going to an international school, obviously I'm learning everything in English. I'm in English environment, surrounded by different mixed people, literally like such a multicultural environment that not only did my personality change, but my language abilities. My mom would speak to me in English and Japanese a little bit, mixed both, but my dad can primarily only speak Japanese. So I feel like with that, it definitely affected my ability to speak with my dad, and that's one sucky part about it. In terms of advantages though, for being able to understand both languages and speak it, I can understand certain nuances and some phrases in Japanese just make more sense. In terms of disadvantages, like I said, not being able to talk with my dad as effectively. Because of that, obviously when I express myself or when I'm talking about about something or an experience, I tend to talk about it in English just because I can articulate what I'm feeling better. I feel like that's sort of the main struggle that I had. Social interactions and friendships. I feel like this one people wonder about most. In terms of myself, I feel like I get along well with bicultural people more. I made friends with people from international schools, so basically people of similar background as me in terms of how they grew up and how they were raised. Even if they were like fully Korean or fully American, they still grew up in Tokyo going to an international school. And I relate to those kind of people. I feel like it's hard for me to be friends with very extremely traditional Japanese, like personality-wise people. One social interaction I had that impacted me quite a lot was going to ballet, having taken ballet classes when I was, I think, 3rd grade. I was the only half Japanese person there. Everyone else was Japanese. And I remember being bullied in ballet. For example, it was my turn. Everyone had to go do a solo round in front of everyone. And after each girl did their solo round, everyone was clapping, cheering them on. But when it came to my turn, it became super quiet, like super, super quiet. And I knew what was going on. And I didn't have any friends, and when it became my turn, like no one cheered for me or clapped for me, and that's when I knew I was being bullied, and I told my mom or my dad, and they pulled me out of ballet class immediately. So that kind of shaped my social interaction and my perspective on how Japanese people perceive someone who's different. Just because I look different, that's how they treated me, you know. And like I said, with my days back in Yochien, like I feel like people kept sort of a distance from me. I think because of that experience, I've accepted that I look different, and I'm never going to be, you know, fully accepted into typical Japanese environments. Obviously, it's case by case. I can't speak for other people, but these social interactions might be different for other people. It might go better for some, and it might go worse for some. But that was just my core memory of what happened to me early days on. My advice for viewers considering moving to Japan, and especially if you're mixed, honestly embrace it. Just know that there's so many half individuals out there. You're not alone in how you feel. I think there's this whole notion of like, I'm not enough this or I'm not enough that. And one thing that my school counselor told me and has stuck with me since is you shouldn't say I'm not enough of this, I'm not enough of that. You are a little bit of everything, and that is what is so unique and special about you. So I think rewiring your brain and perspective so that you think more highly of yourself and not think of being half as a bad thing is a great way to start off. Going back to what I said, obviously times have changed and evolved. People are more open to foreigners and mixed people. However, there are some things that, or some comments that people might make that may be offensive, but oftentimes they don't even know that what they're saying is offensive. So my advice is, if a Japanese person makes a comment and it offends you in some way, just take note of it and maybe like ask another person for their opinion before lashing out on them, just because they may not even know that what they're saying is like offensive. My next advice is obviously learning the language. Japanese, in my opinion, is a very hard language to learn. There's so many different nuances of how to call things. Like, it's just such a hard language. So I feel like the best way to learn a language is by actually speaking it with people. It's one thing to do on Duolingo, but where is that gonna get you, you know? Understanding cultural nuances. So obviously indirect communication, that is very heavily embedded into our culture. People don't say things directly to you. Politeness is very big. Just taking time to learn the social etiquettes and norms in Japan would be very, very beneficial for you. I think this shows consideration and respect for the country, which people will definitely appreciate. My next advice is to be open to new experiences. Obviously, if you move into a country having all these negative premonitions, then it's not going to be fun. Life is what you make out of it. Moving to a new city is challenging in so many ways, but having an open mind, being open to new experiences and activities and whatever, getting to know people will get you far in life. If you didn't like living in Japan, then you didn't like it, but at least you know that you tried your best and you are open to new experiences. For those of you halfies watching this and are considering to move to Japan, my biggest advice is to stay connected to both cultures. If you initially answered, oh, identify as American, for example, versus Japanese, then that's fine. I think over time, as you grow older, being able to experience both cultures, you get to appreciate little bits and pieces of each side. Being true to both of your sides is something so unique and so beautiful about being half. I say engage with media, food, and traditions from both sides of your culture. Having that balance, I feel like, will help you keep grounded in your identity and make you feel appreciative of being from both sides and being able to experience both rich cultures. On a last note, I want to talk about the experience of being an outsider and insider, but I feel like there have been many times where I've been told by Japanese people, "에미 와 일본인잖아." よく言われる. I get told a lot that I am not Japanese. And this is like an example when I say they will say things that they don't realize is offensive to me and sensitive to me, I feel. I'm not a very sensitive person, so I can just laugh it off and shrug it off, but it kind of hurts when you get told by multiple Japanese people that you're not Japanese. And I get it to a certain extent, but how is that fair for you to tell me what I am and what I'm not, you know? Because I feel like I've grown up so differently from a half Japanese person who has grown up systematically in a Japanese system, like Japanese school onwards and Japanese friends. I feel like I can't provide necessarily an authentic POV. However, I can provide an authentic POV from someone who has gone to international school and studied abroad, lived abroad, and has come back. I feel like that's such a unique perspective that is not really shown in the media or in social media, and I want to be able to shed light on some of these topics. Obviously, there's so many people out there similar to me in how I grew up. If you are watching this, I would love for you to leave a comment down below on your experience and what it's like for you growing up in Japan, being a halfie, and going through international school if you did, or if you went to Japanese school, how that was like for you as well, because I would be so much interested in learning. I will say going to Canada for 4 years has definitely helped me stay in tune with my Japanese side, even though there weren't any opportunities for me to speak Japanese other than the fact that like I would meet Japanese people at like restaurants and stuff like that. When people would ask me where I'm from, I would proudly say that I'm Japanese, and I feel like I'm very lucky and happy enough to say that I am from this country. However, right now in my journey coming back to Japan, I feel like the most disparity I feel being half Japanese is job hunting in the career aspect, especially in the corporate side. I am employed right now, however, I'm not in the corporate field at the moment just because I did do the whole interview process for a certain company. It was all conducted in Japanese, and that's when I felt the most disparity and difficulty. Not only was there a language barrier, but like everything is so intense in Japanese like companies and work culture and all of that. So that I'm still navigating and I don't want to say struggling, but I'm navigating. So for the career aspect, I feel like it's definitely hard for people to assimilate here. Honestly, such a limited number of jobs you can get unless you're fluent in Japanese. Nonetheless, there's so many people who are successful living in Tokyo who are foreigners. Some of my friends' dads have been living here for over 20, 30, maybe even years, living a successful life and being a foreigner. So honestly, I feel like if they can do it, anyone can do it. There are so many things to be grateful for being mixed. Obviously, Japan is one of the harder countries to move to just because it's such a nationalistic country from historical times and onwards. Most of the population is ethnically Japanese, which also makes it harder versus living in a country like Canada and America. My last words are embrace your mixed heritage and the strengths it brings. And if you watch this far, if you're considering moving to Tokyo or Japan, being mixed or whatever it is related to this topic, leave a comment down below. I would love to educate myself more on other people's perspectives and their experiences. See you in the next one.